Hello there, very good evening and welcome to tonight's edition of Recount Watch. I'm your host, Eddie Lane, and of course, um, I'm joined this evening by two distinguished gentlemen. I have with me Brigadier retired Mark Phillips, the Prime Minister in waiting. Brigadier, good evening and welcome to the program.
Oh, good evening, Eddie.
And I have my resident guest, Joe Hamilton. Joe, again, good evening
Hi,
and welcome.
Eddie. Good night, and good night, Mark and viewers.
Good night, Joe.
All right, so we are into the 24th day. Well, we completed the 24th day of the recount exercise. The initial 25 days should have expired tomorrow. However, I think we still have a long way to go. The Region 4 boxes maybe just about 50% complete, and we still have a few other regions to also complete. Region 6, Region 8, Region 9, and Region 10, if I'm correct there with my numbers. Some of them are winding down, of course. So, gentlemen, we, we, we shouldn't have been here in the first place had we had a declaration, a tabulation declaration of the results, the true and transparent tabulation and declaration of the results. We would not have been almost 3 months after March 2nd waiting for the duly elected government to be sworn in. That's the People's Progressive Party civic government. I'm going to give both Brigadier Phillips and you, Joe, a chance to give some opening remarks with regards to where we are at this moment.
The important thing to begin with, Eddie, is this. We now have a date based on all things being equal to conclude this matter. And I think that is important tonight for us to say to viewers that there is a final date. We know that up to yesterday, the PNC, they were haggling against a date that is final, and they wanted to leave. For that matter, yesterday we were at the stage where they wanted to give the chief elections officer up to the 16th to do the tabulation, even though we know that all of this could have been wrapped up by the 11th. So we have moved forward where now the tabulation of the district, that report by the chief elections officer will be furnished to the commission on June 13th based on the order. And the commission have until the 16th, 3 days hence, to make a declaration of what the order says, the credible recount. And what is important, the only activity that is a recount, it is the one that is being taking place, the one that is taking place presently at the convention center. We know that Mingo, what he had was a count of Region 4, and that a fraudulent count. And so the order captured the recount that is happening at the moment. And therefore, as much as we had all of this travail and pain, I would want to believe that we are in a better place this evening, and the citizens of Guyana and the nation as a whole, we are in a better place because we have a finite date about when a declaration of the March 2nd, 2020 elections must happen. And also importantly is for those persons who are still having this conversation about what will happen after the recount, there is only one thing that can happen. An election is concluded by a declaration. An election starts with the most important activity, is putting together a voters list of the names of the persons who are qualified to vote. And the election concludes with a declaration of the votes of the electors who were on the voters list, who have indicated in a majority, who have indicated who should be their next president and which party should form the next government. And so there is no turning back on this matter. The train has left the station. And that is the reason why, importantly with all of this, the next 2 weeks, we have to be prepared for all the antics and tantrums and deceptive roles and notes and propaganda coming out of the PNC, APNU, AFC, and their cheerleaders. We have to be prepared, because up to yesterday they were wrestling not to have an end date of this matter. They want to leave it open-ended after the chief elections officer supplied the results as tabulated. And therefore, we are in a good place, but we have to be prepared. And Mark, I'm sure you and Eddie would agree with me. We have to be prepared for all eventuality coming out of the APNU AFC cabal, because as we know, they know since the 2nd of March that they lost the elections. Like we know we won, they know they lost. And therefore, I'm not attempting to alarm people, but I'm seeking to say to people, knowing this desperate bunch we're dealing with, we have to be prepared for all eventuality coming out of them, and not just the political types. They're co-conspirators within GCOM at the senior level in the secretariat. They also, we have to be prepared for them also going on all kind of deceptive route to try somehow to bring the train back from the station. But as I said, the train has left the station. We have to end at a train station, and that train station is a declaration of the results by the 16th of June.
Brigadier.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Ed, and thank you, Joe, for your comments there. And to the people of Guyana who are listening to us tonight, it's important that you take off on your calendar the 2 important dates, the 13th of June and the 16th of June. This has been a struggle. This has been an uphill struggle to return democracy to the people of Guyana. We've passed the point of no return. There's no turning back. We just have to keep our eyes on the prize. We have to, however, remain vigilant, because this is the time, this is a critical time. As you mentioned, Joe, this is a critical time that the AP, NU, AFC will try anything, whatever is the last stroke or whatever master stroke that they have holding, they will try to see if they can change things. But we know, as you mentioned, that we've won these elections and the recount will vindicate us. Already we have on record Mr. Alexander, who's talking about investigation of fraud that were committed. GCOM embarked on a recount, and we like the people of Guyana to know clearly that GCOM embarked on a recount. They will have some observations as they conduct the recount. But what is important is the declaration of the recount that will be made at the end. GCOM has no remit to conduct any investigation, as Mr. Alexander would like to mislead the wider Guyanese public. GCOM, however, has to pursue resolutely to the end the recount of the votes and declare the results of that recount. Perhaps what Mr. Alexander should do is tell us about Mingo, because the fraud that caused us to be in this position is a fraud committed by a GCOM official, Mr. Claremont Mingo, the returning officer for Region 4. And that is the matter that must be pronounced on by all the commissioners as they take us to the final countdown, the conclusion of this exercise and the return of democracy by announcing the results of this recount so we can swear in our government, the legitimate government that represent the will of the people who voted since the 2nd of March and has been waiting for now over 80 days. And we will wait. And I know the people out there will wait with us for another, 20 days?
Thereabout, probably thereabout.
All right, so let us keep our eyes on the prize. The prize is the return to democracy in Guyana.
Thanks, Brigadier. Thanks, Joe. And Joe, both you and Brigadier mentioned the fact that we now have an end date, and that's the important thing, that we know when this exercise will end, and the legitimate, the duly elected People's Progressive Party civic government, Dr. Finale will be sworn in as president, Brigadier Phillips as prime minister, and of course, the PPP forming a government thereafter. You touched briefly, Joe, on the order that GCOM issued today, and you spoke to the very last paragraph in that order. I want to read that verbatim so that the public gets an idea to more or less strengthen the point that you made. And it says, and I quote, "The Commission shall, no later than 3 days after receiving the report, and the report must be completed within by or before the 13th of June. So the Commission shall, no later than 3 days after receiving the report, make the declaration of the results of the final credible count of the elections." The point there, very importantly, the words, very important words there are final credible count. There is no count that could be credible than this one, because whatever was declared was what Mr. Mingo, the numbers that Mr. Mingo played around with and increased the AP and USC votes. And Joe, you will know more than I do that you don't usually ask really, or the words used in the law is not a recount, but actually a final count. When you're asking for a recount, you ask for final count. It therefore means, based on what this order is saying, is that this is the final count. This recount, by law, is called the final count. So there can be no other count that is used to tabulate and used to prepare the report of Mr. Lowenfield to submit to the Commission. So I hope the public understands that. What is the final count? Also, importantly, and I would like your comment, both of you, to expound a little, the fact that you touched on Mr. Alexander, who seems to have usurped the functions of the PRO of GCOM, and who seems to be speaking on behalf of the chair. We remember just a few days ago situations with people trying to speak on behalf of the chair and how that played out. But he is coming out and he is making statements about what the Commission is doing, claiming about, you know, all sorts of things about investigations and so forth. But all of this, I think, in my personal view, fits in to the desperation. Like I said 2 nights ago, Joe, these guys are running mad. Why? Because the Guyanese people finally are getting a chance to see what the PPP, what we have been saying all along, that we won the elections fair and square by over 15,000 votes. Now that that information is becoming public from GCOM itself through the recount, the gang of hustlers are all going mad. Joe.
I listened to Alexander this afternoon, and he suggested to the media that the chief immigration officer was asked, he didn't say by whom, to verify or clarify some names of persons who might not have been in Guyana March 2nd and who some person might have voted for. The reality is, as far as we know, and as far as we are advised and informed by our commissioners, at no time the commission made any decision of that sort. At no time the commission. Because the commission, in my view, and the view of many of the people who speak to this matter who know about the law more than I know about it, the commission role is not to investigate. The commission role is to run an elections. And after it is finished, to make a declaration of the valid votes cast in the favor of political parties. But the question is, for the camera, Mr. Alexander was doing one of two things. He was blatantly lying, or he was attempting to speak on behalf of the Secretariat. And then again, if he is speaking on behalf of the Secretariat, you would now understand why they have difficulties in making decisions, because it's a dysfunctional place. When you have a commissioner speaking on behalf of the Secretariat, I suspect that it is for the chief elections officer or his deputy or the PRO speaking on their behalf. But it's not for a commissioner to be attempting to speak. He couldn't be speaking on behalf of the commission, because all the information we have suggests that the commission made no such decision. The commission is not aware of any letter, or there was any letter sent under the hand of the chairman, based on all the information we have from our commissioners. So the question is, if indeed a letter went, who wrote, and for what reason, and for what purpose? Because let us assume some information is received. What do you do with it? What? It has to do with the ballots counted. You know, this is and we continue to make the point, this is a mathematics exam. This is a maths game and not an English game. This count or recount, as we call it, that is what it is. It is counting the ballots cast by the citizens of this country, finally, to clear up all speculations coming from whoever about what the votes cast for each party should be. And the point you raised, Eddie, when you read the last paragraph of the order, what that says is that this final count supersedes any other thing that existed before. Because this is the final. Whatever existed, whether district or whether low and field tabulation using Mingo fraud, that makes low and field tabulation fraudulent itself. So, you know, the report to low and field prepared is not just Mingo's fraud anymore. It's low and field fraud also, because he used deliberately results of a district that he know was fraud, because he would have had in his possession the statements of polls of all the districts, the same way how individually the ROs received the statement of poll from the POs, and the DROs, lo and behold, would have had all the statement of poll for every district. So when he maliciously submitted his report or prepared his report, he was doing it with the full knowledge that Mingo's declaration for District 4 was fraudulent because they did not match his statement of poll that was polls that were submitted to him by under the hands of the different ROs of the district. I suspect, Brigadier and Eddie, I suspect what has happened. Why Mr. Lowenfield refusing to, and has refused studiously to present to the commissioners the statement of poll that he has in his possession, and why APNU, AFC, PNC has refused to present to the public their statement of poll. I suspected two things might have happened, or a combination of both of the things. They amended the statements of poll to suit and fit Mingo's spreadsheet. Either that, or they created bogus statements of poll with Mingo's number on it. And that is the reason why Lowenfield has refused to make available to the commissioners the statement of poll that he's supposed to get in his possession. And that is why, because if you recall, Brigadier and Eddie, if you recall, when the first fraud was attempted by Mingo, the only political party that had the same numbers was the PNC APNU AFC, Aldo Lawrence and Basil Williams. They were the only people, and therefore it shows that they were in a conspiracy, because all the other political parties that had the statement of poll given to them by the presiding officer to their agents the night at elections, the numbers they had on those statement of polls for Region 4, it was vastly different to the numbers that Mingo's spreadsheet had, that Waldo Lawrence and Basil Williams, they were concurring the numbers that were being put before the commission, before the party and the people and the observers. And therefore, that is their dilemma. Why they can't put forward statement of poll. And so Alexander, he has tried, you know, and I tell you, you know, Mark and Eddie, you have to give him credit, you know, with all his deceits. No, I mean, yeah, with all the deceit and all the shenanigans and all the double speak, you have to give him credit that he has fought for his master right through and through. Up to this moment, this afternoon, he is still fighting for his master. So you have to give him credit for that. The guy, I mean,
he's one of the courageous minds.
Yeah. You know, I mean, while Strutman and Corbyn got tired, Alexander, for whatever reason, he is still smoking busy and Congo Pump. He is already always prepared to defend his master. You know, he is using his herbs. And that is what keeps him going. You have to really give him credit. With all his deceit, with all his double speak and his shenanigans and his pseudo law speech, you know, he tried to be a pseudo lawyer interpreting law, and so, you know, you have to give him credit. So I'm doing that to you. Vincent, I'm giving you credit that you can say that you fought to the end for David Granger. He should really give you an OR before he demits office very shortly.
Well, I was about to question that statement.
Vincent, apparently lied to the media this afternoon, still speaking for his master, when he suggests that, giving the impression that the commission took a decision to write the chief immigration officer. As I said, and I repeat, based on the information we have, there is no such decision made by the commission. And anyone who would have done it, they have gone on their own frolic. And we don't know to what end. So that is the position regarding that matter that Alexander raised this evening.
Brigadier.
Well, Joe has more or less said it all, and as you mentioned, we back to an average of 80 boxes pumped per day. And soon, very soon, the majority of boxes that will be counted in any one day will be the remainder of the Region 4 or District 4 boxes. And we have already seen that the boxes that were not verified, whenever you open a box that was not verified, that was utilized by Mengo to conduct his mischief, that itself is a message, the results of the recount of those boxes. Each box has its own story of the votes that Mr. Mengo has played with, deflating the votes for the PPPC and inflating the votes for the APNU AFC. And those boxes are telling stories. And perhaps that is what Mr. Alexander, he's been skillfully avoiding using the name Claremont Mengo. He's been skillfully avoiding talking about what happened in Region 4. And maybe we need to impress upon him to tell us about Mengo and tell us about Region 4. Tell us what to expect as we continue to recount the Region 4 boxes. Because what we've been seeing so far is that the statements of polls in possession of the PPPC, whenever they count a box that they did not verify, is the exact or similar results. So the writing is on the wall for the APNU AFC. And I think everybody now, I note, I didn't get to hear Mr. Norton this afternoon, but I saw him when I was at the Artichon Convention Center. I saw him heading to the media, right? With he was walking with Cathy Hughes, former Minister Cathy Hughes. They were headed to the media tent. So these guys are on a campaign, and just to, it's no longer smoke screen, but what they're doing now is to change the narrative. And I don't think even their own supporters are buying what they're selling. I think their own supporters, and I've been interacting with some of their own supporters who are slowly coming over to the fact that the APNU AFC has lost this election. The APNU AFC has a hand or hands. They have hands in what Mengo did. It's either they directed him to do it, because I don't think Mengo acted alone. They either directed him to do it or they work as partners in what was done by Mr. Mengo. And you can recall the signature by a high-ranking member of the PNC. The only signature on that declaration, if you can recall, right?
Yeah.
But signature is there.
Was the signature,
and it should not have been there, So that is what Mr. Alexander should be coming out and give his party's position. And he should start speaking by saying this is the APNU AFC position, and not try to go there and speak under the tent as if he's representing the views of the commission. We want to hear Miss Yolanda Ward. I think that's her name.
yes.
We want to hear more from Ms. Yana Ward. I don't think I've heard her addressing the media over the last couple of days. Perhaps, hopefully tomorrow you should hear from her. We want to hear her. We don't want to hear Vincent Alexander. They are on record of shutting down our commissioner when he attempted to speak to the media. No other than the chair sent a message clearly saying that Mr. Gunraj was not speaking for the commission, not for the chair. So by the same token, everything that Mr. Alexander spoke today, I'd like the Guyanese public to understand, he was not speaking for the commission. He was not speaking for the chair. He was just representing, and that's the only thing he could have done, representing the APNU AFC spin on what has taken place today. Today is a significant day. Today is the day that we pin down this whole process to an end date. An end date, and in the military we call an end state, right? So everything is curtailed now and they have to work within the given deadline so we can bring a final conclusion to this thing, to this delay. This delayed exercise. Every day you go to the Ardesham Convention Center, you see they can count over 90 ballot boxes can be counted. But for some reason, instigated and orchestrated by the coalition, we're falling short. We're now in the 80s. After 2 days, I think for 2 days we were in the 90s, we're back into the 80s now, right? However, by our calculation, the time between now and the 13th is adequate to finish counting the remaining boxes. And I want the Guyanese public to stay tuned, not only to Recount Watch, but to the news and listen every time they count a box that Mr. Mingo fiddled with. It will bring us right back to the position of the statement of polls that the PPP received from GCOM. GCOM will not disclose anything. We've asked them so many times. We've asked the AP and UAFC to disclose their statement of polls. Nothing is forthcoming. But what is forthcoming is the clarity that Mr. Mingo committed fraud. And GCOM, in declaring the final credible, and it's interesting to use the word credible, final credible declaration. When they make the final credible declaration, they should also tell us what will become of Mr. Mingo and his actions. Very important for the people of Guyana.
Brigadier, thanks. You raised a few important points. Before we move to have some more discussions on what you said there, I want to go back a little bit to what you mentioned, Joe, with regards to Alexander coming out and talking about investigations and so forth. Somehow there seems to be this narrative that is on the same wavelength with the APNU AFC and some commissioners like Alexander and the others at GCOM with regards to investigation and investigating those frivolous and baseless allegations that are made on a daily basis by the desperate APNU AFC. But one must understand that the APNU AFC is on a fishing expedition, and Alexander wants to pull the commission, GCOM, into this expedition. And, to talk about GCOM investigating the PPP, I want to make the point that both Brigadier and Joe, I know you will agree with me that the PPP has absolutely no problem with an investigation. The fact of the matter here is that all that you're saying now, you want to challenge the results of the elections after the final count. There is a course of action that needs to be taken. It therefore means after the declaration, you have the opportunity to move to the courts and to file an election petition to address these issues.
Yes.
So there is the jurisdiction here is an issue. GCOM, it's like, you know, you're asking the police to investigate itself. You know, GCOM was tasked with managing the elections. We know that the allegations that are being made by the coalition are all false allegations, baseless allegations. But let's say the allegations are made. The allegations are not made against the PPP. The PPP didn't run the elections. It is GCOM that run the elections. So those allegations that are being made are against GCOM. So GCOM is investigating itself. And I hope people understand how ludicrous, how foolish these allegations and this expedition that Mr. Alexander is now taking, unilaterally taking GCOM on is. So I just wanted to clarify that the PPP has absolutely no problem with investigations. What the PPP wants, and I think all the other political parties, except the coalition one, is for it to go through the right channel, which is utilizing the elections petition in the courts.
PPP has no problem.
One, every other thing that has happened, there are allegations. Norton said yesterday is they're not making allegation, they're making proposition. That their GCOM will investigate to prove the veracity of their proposition. I mean,
he said that yesterday.
Is the foolishness, you know. And as Mark stated, when we talk about Mingo, we are not making allegations. We have all the evidence, at least so far. We have 87 ballot boxes, I think, out of East Bank. We have him trying to give to Granger a total in excess of 7,000 votes when you add what he was giving to them and what he was taking away from us. So that is not an allegation. That is fraud. That is staring you in your face. And Alexander seemed not to want at all to speak to that fraud. He is attempting to speak to allegation, and as Norton said, propositions to GCOM. Mark, I heard you earlier said that you saw Cathy Hughes and Norton together. I was about to ask you if they had a lion competition there at the Outer Chung Convention Center, because all the lions you said congregated together.
Unfortunately, I didn't get to listen to their encounter with the press before our program tonight. So
should have been entertaining.
Was in a future program.
Well, I suspect when we finish here, we'll go and scour Facebook and to see if they have the new site, they have them saying anything. But the point is, I was making before I mentioned about the line competition, is that you don't hear Alexander Tall speak about Mingo and his fraud.
No.
And all the other people, they are terrified. And you had the only person I saw speaking to the matter is David Patterson. And he said, you know, which was most shockingly, he was asked whether their statements of poll correspond with Mingo numbers for Region 4. He said yes. And that was very instructive. That is the point I was making, that he inadvertently informed us what I suspected, that they created statements of poll for Region 4 to match Mingo spreadsheet. So David Patterson, at least, he was, if you want to say, honest enough to say yes. You know, but
I think you should use the word kind enough.
Yeah. So the point is, they're not speaking to that matter. The PRO I heard the media asking her that question, and every time she sidesteps the question. They are told don't deal with that matter. And I don't think the media has done enough as regards seeking to ferret out the conspirators regarding this Mingo fraud. Going behind it, asking the tough and hard questions as to how this could have happened, as to how the chairman could have locked herself away at the same building when this fraud was going on, as to how Lowenfield made himself unavailable during the period. All of that, and the point Mark made earlier, even before Walter Lawrence signed that first declaration as a co-signatory, she was very busy at the center. For that matter, she apparently, it looked to me like she had an office set up at the Ashman building. The way she was allowed to go up and down all the stairways, in and out, the 2 days that we were there when Mingo was attempting to concoct this fraud. And therefore, you have allegations that Alexander is seeking to champion should be investigated. And he is refusing to have GCOM investigate fraud that took place, blatant fraud. And Mark and Eddie, I have said before, based on information I have, suggest that if we think East Bank was terrible, I'm told East Coast is worse than what we saw transpired regarding the boxes on the East Coast, on the East Bank. Because if you recall, if we remind citizens, we still had, when Mingo started East Bank, we still had some 78 boxes to be counted for Georgetown, this sub-district, the two sub-districts in Georgetown, South and North. We still had 78 boxes. But Mingo couldn't get the numbers he wanted in Georgetown. He had to go out of Georgetown. Two reasons. One, he couldn't get the numbers just by inflating the numbers for Granger and Apnew. He also had to manipulate the PPP numbers to bring it down, to get to, because what they were facing is an average of 22,000 votes they had to find. They had to find 15,000 odd votes that we won the elections by, and then they had to find 7,000 votes as declared by Mingo that they won the elections by. So he had to find 22,000 votes, and he couldn't find it in Region 4, in Georgetown, I mean. He went to East Bank, titivate with 87 boxes, and in on the East Coast, I'm sure he titivated via spreadsheet with more than 87 boxes, because the magnitude of the fraud, we will see it. And that is the reason why they're going so slow with this Region 4, because they're terrified. Winding down Region 4, the fraud will stare these people more in their face. Remember, we started Region 4 with fraud.
Yes.
We will end Region 4
with fraud.
Tabulation with fraud.
Yeah.
That is what is going. And the fraud that we will end the Region 4 tabulation with, as I understand it, is more grievous than the fraud we started in dealing with the East Bank. Because now we're dealing with Georgetown. Based on everything, they should have completed by now, or close to completion, the district south of Georgetown district. They should have, because the last, as says, yesterday I think posted that they were about finishing nearly 80% of the boxes from south of south of the city. Then they will deal with north, I suspect, and then they will go to the East Coast, where the more grievous fraud Mingo attempted with the votes to get 22,000 votes for Granger. Somebody said, I saw some statistician did an extrapolation, and he said they had to get, I think it's 400 and something boxes. They had to manipulate 63 or 65 votes in every box of 400 and odd to get the 22,000 votes. So,
Yes.
and if he's correct, Mark, we just dealt with 87 boxes. We still have, if the statistics that was done, the person is correct, then we still have a long way to go. As of today, Region 4, they still have what? Mark, what do you have, Eddie? About 500 boxes? Yesterday was 500 something boxes.
500 plus boxes.
Right,
So
they still have 500 plus boxes.
Something boxes are likely to have bloated numbers. Numbers
Yes.
are conflicting with
If they so we're in for, so the point is, you know, if I was UPNU, AFC, and this conspirators, Myers and Lowenfield and them, I would have started with the fraud. So by the time we end Region 4, some people might likely to forget. But, you know, but it shows that they're not even smart. They're not even smart in doing this thing. They started off with the fraud, and they will end with the fraud, staring the Guyanese people in their faces. And we would ask the media, you know, tonight I'm saying to the media, all the questions you keep asking, ask Alexander about Mingo's fraud. Keep asking them that question, the same way how the media always try to ask us about who voted for whom. And Eddie, you made a important point earlier that these elections weren't these elections weren't run by PPP Civic. These elections were run by the Guyana Elections Commission. So any deficiency, it is GCOM that is responsible for that deficiency. And the point you raised earlier is that if you are the ones who are deficient, you cannot investigate yourself. And that is the point. Let us assume that these allegations, they have some credence and veracity to them. How would GCOM do it? How will they do it? For what reason, to what end? When we are concerned primarily with a final count of the votes cast. That is what this exercise is about.
Brigadier, I'm going to bring you in there.
How will GCOM investigate? This is a police matter. You know, it is a police matter.
They're all allegations, but let's, like Joe said, let's say that, okay, there is some credence to it. Then it has to be investigated by the police. And it can't just be cherry picking as well.
No.
You don't want allegations without evidence to be investigated about dead people voting and about people who migrated voting. And you're not also investigating the blatant, naked fraud by the courageous mind, Mingo, which was captured on camera, which is now being revealed to the public. So you can't investigate one part and leave the other.
You know, Ed, the only thing that needs to be investigated, and I need to say it again, is Mingo's fraud. Everything else, they're just observations. It doesn't affect the results. The only thing that needs to be investigated is the issue that affected the results. You know, everybody talk about clear or what, fair, transparent, and credible elections you wanted. The only thing that upsetted the process from being transparent, and credible is what Mingo did. So Mr. Norton, Mr. Alexander, all of them should really come and tell the Guyanese people about what Mingo did. You know, they should impress upon GCOM to report the matter to the police. It's a criminal matter. Not to give the people the impression that the PPP committed a fraud to help the APNU AFC win the election that they're now calling or deeming as an election that is not credible. It sounds so foolish. What the PPPC did was what every political party was expected to do. Crisscross the country and campaign. Sell your programs to the people on your campaigns through your manifesto. And I think what the APNU AFC should be doing now is commend us for doing a better job than they did. We went into every nook and cranny of this country, every village, every town, and we didn't boss people in. We went in and we communicated with the people. And the people voted for us because the people saw hope. They saw hope in our program. They read our manifesto. The pullout from our manifesto was written in simple language that the average Guyanese could read and understand. And they saw a party campaigning before them with a program to improve their life. Not a party who they give an opportunity to lead them. You recall May 2015, right? The APNU won the election. The PPP conceded. They had an opportunity. They failed the people. And now they want to disrespect the will of the people. That is the issue we have to deal with. And in respecting the will of the people, Mr. Mingo must be taken before the courts for that criminal act that he committed.
You see, thanks again, Brigadier. When you look at the sum total of what is going on, both Brigadier and Joe, is that all of these red herrings and the sideshows, as we always call them, that are taking place. And I want to make the point because I see the minions of the coalition, the Christopher Jones and the guy who stole the money from UG.
Yeah, Duncan.
Maypal and Duncan.
And all of them. Out there spewing propaganda, trying to mislead this public. And I feel pity for young men like them who are trying to enter politics and can look at the Guyanese people and lie to them like this. But this is what they do. Every time they make objections or observation or proposition, whatever they call them at the recount stations, they walk in and everybody talking about it. And they call out 60 names.
Yes.
Or well, 60 serial numbers. And they object to 60 serial numbers. When you check the 60 serial numbers, you find one person voted legitimately. It's not that the person died and voted. It's not that the person is out of the country and voted. That one serial number, the name to that, maybe that one person voted who was in the country, who was eligible to vote, and who was alive. It's sad that they have to say who was alive, based on their thinking. Voted. What the propagandists would do now is to take the 50 or 60 serial numbers and they create their table. That is why they're talking about 90,000 irregularities. It is 90,000 instances where they concocted or they just pull serial numbers and concoct irregularities that don't even exist. Out of the 90,000 odd names that they talk about, people in vote, people who died vote, and people who are out of the country voted, and so on, maybe out of all the serial numbers that they carry there, thousands of them, maybe it's less than 100 of those persons voted. and all of them voted legitimately. So we need to make the point, because they're putting that out there to say, oh, there is 100 or 1,000 or 90,000 irregularities. That's not the case. The only irregularity during this election exercise is what Brigadier Phillips spoke about just now. That is the fraudulent acts by Mr. Mingo and those who aided and abetted him, like Roxanne Myers and the others. That's the only fraudulent activity. That's the only irregularity. The votes are being counted, and it's revealing exactly what the SOPs in the People's Progressive Party Civics Possession has. Might give and take maybe 1 or 2 votes either way. Nothing of significance to change the elections in any material way. I say all of that to make the point, to get you to come in to talk a little bit now about the desperation of this cabal when they realize that they have lost power. So you find the lies coming out. You find they even can't lie together. You know, they can't plan one lie and say, let's lie together. So you have different lies coming from them, conflicting. Even the lies are conflicting each other, you know, because of the desperation. At the end of the day, the will of the people is what matters, and democracy will win out. I have 4 minutes more. I'm going to split that between the two of you to just give your comments on the points I raised, and of course, your closing comments.
Quickly, Eddie, is if you note Amna Ali, she brought a new lie yesterday. She said that apparently we had similar ballot boxes with all the paraphernalia like GCOM, because she said that we switched ballot boxes in the boats, in the rivers that were transporting boxes in some region. Could you imagine that? That the boatman
and the boat
was PVP. I mean, you have to laugh when you hear this thing. The minibus driver
and the minibus
was PVP. And GCOM. So these buses that are taking the PO with the boxes, Mark, we have some special skills nobody else got. The PP got some special skills. Because we knew how many votes will be casted for each political party. Because we had to get a box with similar amount of votes.
To match the statement of
match GCOMs. Because if we follow Amna Ali, I'm live, she said that we switched ballot boxes whilst they were being transported to our offices. And so we have some special skills that I don't think, but let me say this, and I quote from the EU ambassador speaking to this matter yesterday. 2 things he said. 1, he said he traveled and visited numerous polling places during the election day, and the EU team that came to Guyana visited hundreds of polling places in all the regions. He said the people that came are persons who have experience working 30 and 40 years observing elections. And he said, if these elections were not credible, the people with their experience and their skill, they would have known that. And they would have said that to him. But everyone indicated election day, the election was free, fair, transparent, and credible. And he said, most importantly, he said the people who continue to spew and try to discredit the elections day activity, what they're attempting to do is to insult the intelligence of the Guyanese. Exactly. And that is what these APNU AFC leaders. And that is the reason why I say this as I close. These elections, it has brought the end of dozens of people's political career. It is young and old. For the young, some of them whose career has not even started yet, it is over. And for the old, many will be thrown in the dust basket, because you all would agree with me, and viewers would agree with me, to continue to be a political leader of substance, people have to have some respect for you, and you have to have credibility.
Exactly.
And coming out of, even we go way back to the no confidence motion from the 21st of December 2018, there are numerous politicians in the coalition who the Guyanese people have lost all respect for, young and old people. And they have made themselves untrustworthy and persons who lack credibility. And that is this elections. It has brought the end of. Importantly, as I close here, as I continue to say, we have been fighting and we have fought from since 2018. And what we continue to fight for up to this moment, it is for a democratic country. We will not allow Mr. Granger and his cabal to bring the burden of dictatorship on this country. And that is the reason why all of us, we continue to fight every day. And that is the reason why I applaud the young people who have taken a stand on this matter, because this country, in large measure, belongs to them. And that is what this fight is about. Democracy to prevail and to banish dictatorship once and for all. That is what it is about.
Thank you.
Your closing comments.
Well, let me end by saying that we have a final date for the final credible declaration. The APNU AFC, as you know, these discussions started about 2 to 3 days ago to arrive at this final date. They fought against it, but we've finally able to have gazetted this final date. And therefore, the APNU AFC, from now until that date, will remain in desperation mode. And I would like to let the wider Guyanese society beware that there will be more desperate speakers, desperate leaders from the APNU AFC, who will go to the media and will try to twist the narrative. Listen to them, but try not to believe everything that they try to tell you, because this is about returning democracy to Guyana. On the 16th of June, we will restart the democratic process and the development of Guyana with the legitimately elected leader, our president-elect, Dr. Irfan Ali.
Gentlemen,
16. And let us remain focused towards that date.
Gentlemen, I want to thank you very much for joining me this evening. We had quite an interesting discussion, and of course, our viewers, we want to say thanks so much to those of you who joined us on our Facebook Live, and of course, the people who are joining us on television in Georgetown, on NTN, in Berbice on NTN, and of course, the folks on the Essequibo Coast who are joining us through RCA Channel 8. Gentlemen, again, thank you very much, and our viewers, thanks.
All right, Eddie, thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Joe.
Good night.
Ed. Good night, Joe.